Worst 1970s sitcoms you forgot ever existed.
It's all right, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. It's just a monkey.
While MASH, All in the Family, and Happy Days ruled the airwaves, dozens of others stumbled onto TV and crashed before most people even noticed. NBC once spent $500,000 an episode on a flop so bad it became late-night punchline material. Yet even that disaster looks like a masterpiece compared to the bizarre talking chimp sitcom at number 4. This is television's forgotten junk drawer, rattling with laugh tracks nobody laughed at.
The unsinkable Miss Cox.
People are going to be laid off because of an inspection? Hooey. Now you go...
25 sitcoms so cringeworthy networks tried to bury the tapes for good. And wait until you see which former TV icon went from a beloved role to headlining a show canceled before its first commercial break. Let's step into the shag-carpeted living room of television's most spectacular failures. After MASH. In 1983, the final episode of MASH drew 106 million viewers, more than most Super Bowls. It was television perfection, the kind of farewell that should have been left sacred. But CBS executives saw those numbers and their hearts turned to dollar signs. They threw $500,000 an episode at After MASH, dragging Colonel Potter, Klinger, and Father Mulcahy into a stateside veterans hospital. The problem wasn't the acting or even the premise. It was that they'd taken characters designed for wartime and dropped them into peacetime suburbia. Without Hawkeye's wit cutting through the chaos of war, these beloved figures became hollow echoes of themselves. Viewers watched 2 episodes and felt like they were witnessing grave robbing. Within 2 seasons, CBS wheeled it off life support, but the damage was done. They'd cheapened one of television's greatest achievements for a quick buck. What made this failure particularly painful was watching actors who had created television history, trying to recapture magic that couldn't be bottled. Harry Morgan, Jamie Farr, and William Christopher were talented performers, but they were playing characters specifically designed to work in an ensemble, not carry a show. Mrs. Columbo. Here's where it gets truly heartbreaking. For years, Columbo fans had fallen in love with a woman they'd never seen. The detective's wife existed in our imaginations through Peter Falk's gentle mentions, a mysterious woman with a saying for every situation, the perfect complement to TV's most lovable sleuth. NBC looked at that beautiful mystery and decided to shatter it for profit. They cast young Kate Mulgrew as a newspaper reporter solving crimes, calling her Mrs. Columbo, despite being decades younger than the woman Columbo had described. It wasn't just bad television, it was cultural vandalism. Peter Falk was so disgusted he refused to mention his wife in future episodes ever again. Think about that. They destroyed a beloved character so completely that the actor who created her couldn't bear to speak her name. When ratings tanked, they desperately renamed her character, pretending she wasn't married to Columbo at all. But it was too late. They'd killed something beautiful that had lived in millions of hearts. The show's failure revealed something deeper about the entertainment industry's relationship with mystery and imagination. Mrs. Columbo worked precisely because she didn't exist on screen. She lived in the space between Peter Falk's words and our imaginations. Every viewer could picture her differently, could project their own vision of the perfect partner for the rumpled detective. By giving her a face, a profession, and storylines that had nothing to do with the character we'd imagined, co-ed fever. Animal House had just proven that college comedies could print money, so CBS executives went hunting for their own toga party goldmine. They rushed co-ed fever into production, a formerly all-girls college going co-ed, without understanding what made the original work. The result was so catastrophically bad that some stations refused to air it. Cancelled after 1 episode, it became television legend as the show that died faster than a fraternity's sobriety vow. But here's the terrifying part. This disaster would look like Shakespeare compared to what came next. The fundamental problem with co-ed fever wasn't just that it was poorly executed. It was that the creators completely misunderstood what made Animal House successful. John Belushi's film worked because it had genuine anarchic energy, rebellious spirit, and characters who felt real despite their outrageous behavior. Co-ed fever tried to recreate that magic through calculated chaos, corporate-approved rebellion, and characters who felt like they'd been focus grouped into existence. Me and the Chimp, and here it is.
You have such a delicate touch, Doctor. Yes, Auntie.
Television's rock bottom. Ted Bessel, fresh off that girl's success, found himself starring as a dentist whose family adopts a chimpanzee named Buttons. Not a talking chimp with personality, just an actual animal in clothes getting into wacky situations while canned laughter told you when to smile. This wasn't comedy. It was desperation in a costume. CBS gave it 13 episodes of pure torture before mercifully ending everyone's suffering. Ted Bessel later called it the low point of his career. But the real tragedy is that network executives looked at this concept and thought, yes, this is what America wants. The fact that a major network spent months and millions on a show about a chimp in pants tells you everything about how far creativity had fallen. But the deeper horror of Me and the Chimp wasn't just its premise. It was what it revealed about television's complete abandonment of human storytelling. The show's creators seemed to believe that audiences would be satisfied watching an actual animal stumble through domestic situations without any meaningful character development, emotional stakes, or genuine humor. Ted Bessel was a talented actor who had shown real chemistry with Marlo Thomas on That Girl. He deserved better than becoming a straight man to a chimpanzee who couldn't act, couldn't speak, and whose only personality came from whatever the animal trainers could coax out of it on any given day. The Brady Brides, the Brady Bunch, had given America the perfect blended family, wholesome, funny, and impossibly sweet. So naturally, when nostalgia hit, networks decided to capitalize on those warm memories by creating something that would make fans question why they ever loved the original. The Brady Brides brought back the two oldest daughters, now married to polar opposites, forced to live under one roof. It had all the Brady names, but none of the innocent charm that made the original magical. Watching it felt like seeing your childhood friends at a high school reunion, technically the same people, but all the joy had somehow leaked out. The show lasted 6 months before audiences quietly changed the channel, but the real damage was cultural. They'd taken America's favorite TV family and turned them into just another forgettable sitcom. Some things should stay sacred. The premise seemed sound on paper. Marcia and Jan Brady, now grown and married, living in the same house with their husbands due to economic circumstances. The setup promised all the sibling rivalry of the original, with the added complications of marriage and adult responsibilities. But what the creators failed to understand was that the Brady magic came from the family unit as a whole, not just from individual Brady kids. Eve Plum and Maureen McCormick returned as Jan and Marcia, but something fundamental was missing. The actresses had grown up, but their characters felt frozen in time, as if they were still children playing house, rather than actual adults dealing with real marital issues. The scripts tried to recreate the gentle conflicts of the original Brady Bunch, but without the parents' wisdom to guide resolution, the sisters just seemed petty and immature. The husbands were written as one-dimensional opposites, one neat, one messy, one ambitious, one laid back, one serious, one goofy. These weren't characters, they were plot devices designed to create the kind of mild domestic conflicts that had worked in the original series. But those conflicts had worked precisely because they involved children learning life lessons, not adults who should have already learned them. Perhaps most damaging was how the show treated the Brady legacy. The original series had been about a family learning to blend together, finding love and understanding despite their differences. The Brady Brides was about people who couldn't figure out how to live together despite being family. It was the anti-Brady message. Families don't work, marriage is frustrating, and growing up means losing the joy that made childhood special. Florence Henderson made occasional appearances as Carol Brady, but these guest spots only highlighted what the show was missing. Her presence reminded viewers of the warmth, wisdom, and unconditional love that had made the original series work. Without that foundation, the Brady Brides felt like hollow imitation rather than genuine continuation. Sanford Arms. Sanford and Son was lightning in a bottle, Red Fox's explosive timing and razor-sharp wit creating comedy gold week after week. When Fox left, NBC faced a choice. Let the show die with dignity or try to keep the franchise alive without its soul. They chose poorly. Sanford Arms kept the neighborhood but replaced the magic with a boarding house run by Fred Sanford's old friend. Watching it was like hearing a cover band try to recreate your favorite song. All the notes were technically correct, but the fire was gone. 8 episodes later, NBC pulled the plug, but the lesson was clear. Some shows worked because of irreplaceable chemistry, not transferable formulas. The tragedy of Sanford Arms wasn't just that it failed, it was that it proved how little the network understood what made Sanford and Son special. Red Fox wasn't just a comedian playing a character. He was a performer whose entire life experience informed Fred Sanford's worldview. His comedy came from decades of struggle, from understanding exactly what it meant to be a black man trying to make it in America during the mid-20th century. When NBC tried to replace that with Theodore Wilson as Phil Wheeler, they weren't just swapping actors, they were trying to manufacture authenticity that can't be manufactured. Wilson was a talented performer, but he was being asked to fill shoes that were custom-made for someone else's feet. The show kept the same setting, the cluttered junkyard, the shabby house, the working-class Los Angeles neighborhood, but these were just props without the person who gave them meaning. Fred Sanford's junkyard wasn't funny because it was messy, it was funny because of how Fred saw it, talked about it, and used it as a platform for his commentary on life. Sanford Arms tried to recreate the original's formula by surrounding Wilson with eccentric boarders and putting him in situations similar to those that had made Fred Sanford famous. But comedy isn't about situations, it's about how specific people react to situations. Without Fox's particular brand of indignation, frustration, and stubborn pride, the situations felt flat and forced. The show also lost the central relationship that had driven Sanford and Son, the father-son dynamic between Fred and Lamont. That relationship had provided emotional weight to balance the comedy, giving audiences reason to care about the characters beyond just laughing at their antics. Sanford Arms had no comparable emotional center, just a collection of quirky characters doing quirky things. Perhaps most tellingly, the show abandoned the social commentary that had made Sanford and Son culturally significant. Fox's Fred Sanford was more than just a comedian. He was a voice for an entire community, someone who could address issues of race, class, and social justice through humor. Sanford Arms was just generic sitcom material that happened to feature black characters. Blansky's Beauties. When Happy Days was printing money, executives got drunk on success and started spinning off everything that moved. Blansky's Beauties took Nancy Walker to Las Vegas as a former showgirl managing a dance troupe, somehow connected to Happy Days despite being set 20 years later. The timeline made no sense, the jokes fell flat, and audiences spent more time trying to figure out the connection than laughing at the punchlines. It was canceled after 13 episodes, proving that you can't high-kick your way out of a fundamentally broken premise. But the real tragedy was watching the Happy Days universe get stretched so thin it snapped. The Roper's Threes Company had perfect chemistry. Jack, Janet, and Chrissy's misunderstandings bouncing off the Roper's nosy interference. The spin-off moved Stanley and Helen to a posh condo community, but without the main cast to react to, their antics became annoying rather than endearing. Norman Fell and Audra Lindley did their best, but they'd been designed as supporting players, not leading characters. The ratings dropped so fast that ABC canceled it after 2 seasons, then, in a move that showed how poisonous the whole experience had become, refused to let Fell return to Three's company. They'd destroyed both the spin-off and the original show's chemistry in one brilliant stroke of corporate stupidity. The Associates, from the creators of Taxi, came The Associate, starring a young Martin Short in a legal comedy that critics loved and audiences ignored. The writing was sharp, the premise solid, but it proved that sometimes even quality can't overcome bad timing and worse marketing. CBS axed it after 1 season, and today it's remembered as That Brilliant Show Nobody Watched, a cautionary tale about how television's best ideas can disappear while garbage survives. Out of the Blue. Some spin-offs stretch credibility, but Out of the Blue broke it completely. Marketed as a Happy Days spin-off, it followed an angel named Random, helping people on Earth, connected to the original show through one forced crossover episode that felt like a contractual obligation. The saccharine tone clashed with the era's sharper comedy, and it flamed out in less than a season. Even the 1970s couldn't make angel comedy work, proving that some concepts are too pure for their own good.
Housewives take to the streets.
This is the first time you've ever done this, isn't it?
You can go crazy in Connecticut, you know.
Carter Country. In the post-Barney Miller era, small-town police comedies seemed like television's next goldmine. Carter Country followed a Georgia sheriff and his deputies leaning on Southern stereotypes and fish-out-of-water bits that felt tired even in 1977. It wasn't terrible, just aggressively mediocre. Even the actors looked like they were marking time until better offers came along. After 2 seasons of limping through predictable plots, it disappeared into syndication purgatory, where reruns felt like reruns of reruns. Grandpa Goes to Washington. Jack Albertson was a seasoned pro who deserved better than this political comedy about a retired professor-turned-senator fighting corruption with folksy charm. It was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with all the tension, replaced by awkward laugh tracks and toothless social commentary. Even Albertson's natural warmth couldn't save a concept that was afraid of its own political implications. After 1 season, Grandpa quietly packed up and went home, leaving viewers wondering why anyone thought politics and sitcoms were a natural match. The Girl with Something Extra. Sally Field returned to sitcoms with psychic powers as her something extra, proving that not every supernatural concept can carry a series. The show leaned so hard on tired ESP gags that by the 3rd episode, the jokes felt psychically recycled. NBC canceled it after 1 season, but the real damage was to Field's career momentum. She'd have to wait for Norma Ray to remind everyone she was more than just a flying nun with telepathy.
What do you mean you already been?
Barney,
Yeah?
I made the cannonballers tonight.
Apple Pie. From the creator of All in the Family came this Depression-era boarding house comedy starring Rue McClanahan. On paper, it sounded like a quirky gem. On television, it felt like a stage play stuck in slow motion, unsure whether it wanted to be comedy or drama. ABC put it out of its misery after just 2 episodes, yes, 2, proving that even pedigreed creators can lay eggs when they lose sight of what made them special. The San Pedro Beach Bums. ABC looked at Charlie's Angels and Chips and decided to create 5 beach-dwelling slackers who occasionally solved crimes. The San Pedro Beach Bums were supposed to be lovable rogues, but came across as walking punchlines in bad shorts. The whole thing felt like a rejected Scooby-Doo episode without the dog, the mystery, or the snacks. 7 episodes later, the bums were evicted from the airwaves, leaving behind only the memory of how not to do action comedy. Turnabout. Body swap comedies work in movies because they have 2 hours to explore the concept. NBC thought they could stretch it into a weekly series about a husband and wife who magically switch bodies after touching an antique statue. Week after week, it leaned on the same, "I can't walk in heels" and "Why is shaving so hard?" gags until audiences started wishing they could swap the channel. 7 episodes later, NBC granted everyone's wish and turned it off permanently.
We call him Yo-Yo. He weighs 427 pounds. He's a completely mobile computer.
Holmes and Yo-Yo. Before RoboCop or Terminator, there was Holmes and Yo-Yo, a buddy cop sitcom where one partner was a robot who malfunctioned for laughs. Yo-Yo would print parking tickets from his mouth, take photos with his chest, and shut down when someone clapped too loud. ABC hoped for laughs, but got groans, and after 13 episodes, Yo-Yo was permanently powered down. The show's biggest accomplishment was making viewers appreciate how difficult science fiction comedy really is. We got it made. The pitch was simple. 2 single guys hire a gorgeous young woman as their live-in maid, and hijinks ensue. The reality was uncomfortable comedy built entirely on innuendo and situations that made viewers squirm for all the wrong reasons. Critics tore it apart, audiences bailed, and NBC canceled it after 1 season. But in a move that defied all logic, they brought it back in 1987 and it bombed again, proving that some bad ideas never learn. Carter Country, second entry, different show. This was actually a different disaster than number 11. Television was so desperate for small-town comedy that multiple Carter Countries existed. This one leaned even harder on Southern stereotypes, proving that repetition doesn't improve terrible concepts. Hee-haw honeys. If hee-haw was corny, hee-haw honeys was the entire cornfield. CBS spun the variety show into a sitcom about a country cafe run by sisters, with musical guests performing between comedy segments that made viewers long for sophisticated humor. Even in the 1970s, audiences weren't buying what the honeys were selling. The show folded after 1 season, leaving behind only the question of who thought this was a good idea. The Waverly Wonders. Before the A-Team made him famous, Joe Namath tried sitcom stardom as a washed-up basketball player turned high school coach. Broadway, Joe could throw touchdowns but couldn't deliver punchlines, awkwardly reading lines and tripping over comedy beats. NBC benched the show after 3 episodes, proving that athletic talent doesn't automatically translate to comedic timing. The real wonder was how it got greenlit in the first place.
Follow the path of Dusty's trail, oh, Dusty's trail, Dusty's trail.
Dusty's Trail. Bob Denver looked at Gilligan's Island's success and thought, what if we did this exact same show, but in the Old West? Dusty's Trail kept almost identical character archetypes, just swapping the boat for a wagon train and the island for the frontier. It was so shamelessly similar that viewers felt like they were watching reruns in cowboy hats. The show limped through 1 season before riding off into a sunset nobody cared about, proving that even successful formulas have expiration dates. The McLean-Stevenson show Leaving MASH was supposed to launch McLean-Stevenson's solo career. Instead, he ended up in this limp family sitcom about a small-town newspaper editor juggling work and home life with all the wit and charm of wet cardboard. Gone was Colonel Blake's sharp humor. In its place were stale gags and paper-thin plots that made viewers miss what they'd lost. It lasted 12 episodes before disappearing, but Stevenson's post-MASH curse was just beginning. Irabati Nangam murder, T and Tina Pat Morita deserved better than this cultural stereotype parade masquerading as a sitcom. A Welcome Back, Cotter spin-off about a Japanese inventor raising American-born kids. Every joke relied on tired, fish-out-of-water gags that made viewers cringe rather than laugh.
Thank you. Linkby's got trouble. What's the matter? Big Nick just drove up.
The Chicago Teddy Bears Prohibition-era gangsters in a sitcom seemed like comedy gold until CBS tried to execute it. Dean Jones and John Banner, from Hogan's Heroes, ran a speakeasy under the mob's nose, but instead of snappy period humor, they delivered long setups and punchlines that never landed. After 13 episodes, the teddy bears went into permanent hibernation, proving that historical settings can't save fundamentally broken comedy concepts. Baby, I'm back. The premise was wild. A man fakes his death to avoid alimony, then returns years later to win back his family. Demond Wilson and Denise Nicholas gave it their all. But asking audiences to root for a deadbeat dad who traumatized his children was always a losing proposition. One season later, the show was gone, and nobody sent flowers to the funeral. The Betty White Show. Even Betty White's charm couldn't save this 1977 meta-comedy about an actress starring in a police drama opposite her ex-husband. The concept had promise, but the execution was flat and the chemistry non-existent between White and her co-stars.
You're suffering, sir, from an acute case. Good health. You can leave, Doctor. So can you.
The new temperatures rising show hospital comedies can work. Scrubs proved that decades later, but this inconsistent mess went through multiple cast changes, title changes, and tonal shifts without ever deciding what it wanted to be. Viewers didn't have patience for a show that couldn't figure out its own identity, and ABC finally pulled the plug on what felt like multiple different failed shows wearing the same name.
What you do. I do my job. That's it?
The Tony Randall Show. Fresh off The Odd Couple's success, Tony Randall played a Philadelphia judge navigating court cases and home life with his signature neurotic charm. While Randall's wit was still sharp, the scripts were more mildly amusing than must-see TV. It hung on for 2 seasons before being quietly dismissed, proving that even beloved actors can't carry mediocre material on name recognition alone. But Tony Randall's quiet failure represents something larger, the death of character-driven comedy in favor of high-concept gimmicks. These 29 forgotten disasters remind us that some things are too precious to be exploited for profit, that creativity can't be manufactured through corporate formulas, and that the best television comes from genuine human connection rather than demographic calculations. Which of these spectacular failures do you remember stumbling across during late-night channel surfing?